like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Gadigal people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
Sommeliers can, open customers' eyes up so wide, and it's a joy, and they can do that with the confidence because they've got the backup of education. I think that gives you confidence to be truly great at your job.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Annette Lacey is one of Australia's leading wine figures. Her sommelier career has reached the apex of this country's restaurant scene. Today, she holds the title of Group Beverage Manager for Solotel. Oh yeah, she's also a master of wine and one of the most likeable wine professionals I've met. Hiya, Annette. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, Shanteh. How are you?
I'm very well. Annette, let's start a little bit at the beginning of your journey. Where did it all start in hospitality for you?
I suppose I actually did hotel management studies, so I always kind of wanted to get into hospitality. And so you could say I'm a true long-term hospo person. And then I thought I wanted to work on front desk, but I realised that wasn't as fun as working in restaurants. So I went over to restaurants and started working as a restaurant manager. So, and my last restaurant, working on the floor job, was actually at Bank with all the other amazing people that have come out of that restaurant over the years.
And what do you think drew you into wanting to work in hospitality? Was it that you liked food? Was it you thought it was kind of a vibrant scene? Why do that and not a different vocation?
Look, I think I was very naive about food, I think, and I think back then in Australia we didn't know a lot about food, but once your eyes are open to the amazing food that was being created in restaurants, it was like, oh my God, this is such an amazing job and life to be part of. And I was just hooked, and just the vibrancy, hospitality people, when you find a great restaurant to work in, they become your family. So I really love that. And I haven't worked in a corporate 9-to-5 job, so I can't even tell you what that would be like and if it's the same. But, I've got friends that I've had from hospo from when I started. So I think that's kind of testament to the people that go into this industry.
Mm. Yeah, you do kind of become thick and thieves. I don't know if it's got something to do with the pressure, in a high-paced environment, but you do end up making lifelong friends, and they tend to be people of all different kind of characters, don't they? You don't get one kind of cookie cutter personality out of hospo. You kind of have the whole range.
Oh yeah, and you know what they say, what happens on shift stays on shift. You really get in the trenches, and there's some, you can lose it, especially in the beginning when you kind of haven't learned how to manage the stress and pressure. But at the end of the night, you're having a drink and a laugh and, talking about the customers, you just forget it all, which no one holds a grudge. It's just, yeah, it was busy. We were crazy. Move on. Tomorrow's another day. So, and yeah, I love that everyone's a little bit different as well. A little bit out there sometimes.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's colourful and that's great. So when did the kind of wine and beverage steal and kind of shift your focus in that way?
I'd run a few restaurants and I did really love that. Working with people is probably the best part of being a restaurant manager, both the staff and customers. But I have told this story a few times. But one day we had this wine tasting, and I hadn't really ever paid attention to the wine side of the business because we had someone that looked after all the beverage, and it was the old Moet Hennessy, I can't remember what it used to be called before it became LVMH, but the guy came in with Krug, and I'd never had Krug, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll sit down and try this wine. And when he started talking about it, the layers and the complexity and the ripeness of fruit, and then the oak tones underneath, I was like, oh my God, I can actually understand what he's talking about. And I was like, what is this? wine caper. I have to be part of it. It just sounds, this is so interesting. It just was just like a light bulb moment. And that was it. Then went to bank and started working on the floor as a wine waiter because I was like, I'm not going to stay here. I need to go work at somewhere that's got a fantastic list under someone that's amazing. And that was basically it, really.
How amazing. And I love well, it's amazing, first of all. I mean, I can totally understand why Krug was the wine that kind of started it all. Incredible beverage. To this day, like, I think doesn't matter how far you go up that tree, Krug is still always one of those drinks everyone's in awe of. But in terms of like going through the process, did you just immediately start researching about wine? I mean, like you said, bank is an amazing place to work with a huge wine list. So how did you get the confidence to kind of get into it and start working on the floor?
Well, I think the first wine course I did, now you're making me dredge back through my memories. I think I went to the Wine Society and they had like a little wine and cheese kind of course and I just really loved it. And then because I'd been a manager in a lot of restaurants, I knew Jan and Liam Tomlin and I just went to them and said, can I come there? I'll start as a waiter, but I really want to get onto the wine team. And they just gave me a chance, because I was actually a really good waiter probably, so that really helped. And I understood the concept of hospitality and how to look after customers. So they'd seen me in action, so I don't think it was a big stretch. And Remy Bancal was the head somm at the time, and he just took me under his wing. And he was tough. He'd put a glass in front of me and go, "What is this?" And you'd be like, "Geez, hang on, I'm new to this game. I don't even, it's white wine kind of thing." So, it was good. It was great. The French they have a great concept of, getting you in the deep end pretty quickly from a wine perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds terrifying now, but I think that we've all had someone in our life that kind of put us on the spot and you either floundered, which you probably did at the start, or you stepped up or you followed it up with, "I've got no idea, but I'm going to go research it." And I think it's probably a good thing because there are going to be lots of times where someone's going to ask you about a wine and you may not know, and you have to kind of dig deep and have a response at the time. And maybe that is, "I absolutely don't know, but I'll find out for you." So it's not the worst thing to put someone on the spot, I think.
No, and I think that's the hardest thing. And I know even when I was, starting, I would try to answer the question. I hadn't realised that you really needed to, there's people and customers that are far more experienced than you, even now that in areas, they're just a massive Burgundy person and they know absolutely everything that you possibly can't know because you've got a breadth of knowledge, not so much the depth that some of these enthusiasts have. So, I think you learn pretty quickly that you have to seek help because you can't know everything, and not in the beginning. And some people were really nice about it. And, I remember once I'd served this is so bad. I'd served a corked wine to a table and I'd smelt it and I knew it was wrong, and it was like my first or second week. I was like, "Oh, it doesn't quite smell right." And one of the other sommeliers came over and he goes, "You have to go to the table, pick up all the glasses and apologise." Do you know what I mean? And I was mortified. But you know what? It taught me, I knew that there was something wrong with it, but I just did it. I don't know why. And it was the best lesson I ever learnt because I was like, never say, and I'm so paranoid about cork taint now. So it's really, these things make you, right?
Absolutely. And I think I love that. Like, there was an instinct there, but I mean, to kind of go, "Oh, that wine doesn't seem right. Maybe I'll take it to someone and tell them it's not right." I mean, it's presumptuous, but I mean, what a moment. And yeah, I can imagine how hard to kind of apologize to the guests, which, let's face it, maybe they didn't even know and they would have drunk it anyway, but definitely the right thing to do from whoever was telling you to go and apologize. I respect them for that. But was wine a feature kind of in your household? Do you remember your parents drinking wine or collecting wine?
No, mum always had a cask in the fridge, the old cask wine days. But no, I think they weren't big drinkers back then. I think if they had a dinner party or something, but I don't remember wine ever being in the family kind of house at all, actually. So no. So I don't even know where it's kind of come from. I vividly remember my first Lambrusco, and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. This is like sweet. But then I went to mixed drinks like all teenagers. And then when I came back to wine, it was to the beautiful, dry and balanced sweet wines of the world.
Well, you skipped over some disasters, which is a good thing. But we can thank the likes of Krug for you being in the wine world now. What about your family now? I mean, now that you're an MW and your whole world is, full of delicious drinks, do they join you in the beverage enjoyment?
Yeah. Yeah, well, my husband loves wine, and so does my daughter. They're all legal drinking age. I'll just put that out there. They both, and my son as well. They all like wine. I think the young people of today, they like, they still love the seltzers, and that's very fashionable. But I think if I've got a nice bottle open and we're having dinner, then they'll often have a glass. But they don't drink a lot as well during the week, and I don't really want to encourage drinking. But yeah, they really do like wine, which is great. And I think they've been a big part of my MW journey as well. So they've kind of, hopefully, they understand how to respect and enjoy wine. It's not just a vehicle for getting drunk and stuff. So I think that hopefully that's working.
I'm sure watching you, they would understand that it's really such an amazing art form. But before we get to your MW stuff, I do want to talk a little bit about becoming a WSET educator. You were also my first WSET educator, which was amazing. I think you'll always remember the person when you first start studying that's standing up before you talking about wine, because you really do think that they know absolutely everything, and you're just so in awe of all the names and the way that you spoke. And I'll never, ever forget my first few lessons doing WSET. So tell me about that side of things. When did you just decide you wanted to do some teaching?
Well, I'd been so I was still, like, I had two children, and I was working part-time selling wine, which I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's really hard to do, because you've got to create new opportunities, meet new people, and it's a lot different from being on the floor where you've got a captured audience. You're going to sell them wine when you're in a restaurant no matter what, but when you're out going to retail, you've got to, it's a long haul. So I did that part-time, and I was still working in restaurants part-time as a som. And then an opportunity came up at Sydney Wine Academy to do some teaching. So I thought, oh, well, I've done WSET. Let me go and apply. And I just applied. And the way it works is you can teach only if you've done WSET level 3, you can only teach 2 and under, and if you've done 4, you can only do 3 and under, etc. So I then finished my level. I'd done 1 and 2, but I hadn't finished. I'd started level 4, but I'd got pregnant. So I just thought I would really like to see if I like this teaching, and I loved it, because you meet all the up and coming people, and it's really quite rewarding when everyone passes, or when you go out for dinner and you see your students. But it also probably helped me decide I think I can go for MW as well. So that constant reinforcement of information, and the world of wine, changes so rapidly. It's good to stay in touch, and, once you stop studying, it's very easy to forget, the basics as well. So you're always on your game, because there's some curious people out there that are really going to push you as well, which is also great, because, everyone loves a challenge.
I imagine that for me, a lot of the kind of facts and figures of and contextual information that you need to know about wine, it is really a little bit about that kind of repeat, that kind of, constantly talking about it, that really helps cement some of that information. So I can imagine that when you're teaching, that stuff just kind of falls into your brain and kind of sits there for a while once you've said it a few times. So I can imagine it can be really helpful as a tool for your own journey in wine as well.
Oh, yeah. Even my dad always said education is the best tool you can ever have in your life. And, hospitality gets a bit of a bad rap because people don't regard it as a real job. But doing things like the MS and WSET, this adds credibility and, like an official kind of congratulations kind of thing. Like you have studied, you do take this seriously. And I think, that's why, sommeliers in restaurants can really make or break people's journey in their venue because, sommeliers can, open customers' eyes up so wide, and it's a joy, and they can do that with the confidence because they've got the backup of education. Like, I think that gives you confidence to be truly great at your job.
I think it's one of the things, I'm going a bit off topic here, but I think it's one of the things that I think about, and I did think about a lot when I worked in restaurants, is that what is the way forward for the industry? And I used to think, this kind of boom that we've seen of sommeliers and people wanting to be involved in wine and wanting to further their education has been really beneficial. But I was frustrated in my time because there wasn't that kind of outlet for the other roles that are in the front of house. And I just thought, like you said, this is a real job. It takes huge amounts of skill, but we need to have more of these kind of learning facilities for all the other jobs, like what it means to be a great waiter and what it means to be a great restaurant manager. And I just felt that there was lots of opportunities for sommeliers and chefs, but not a lot of opportunities for the other roles. Do you feel that way?
Look, I agree 100%. If you're in Europe, you are highly regarded if you're a head waiter or, whatever job it is, it's all about the respect. So I think the bar side as well, there's no formal training, and they're the magic makers as well. You start with a great cocktail, and then that's the start of the night, and it can only get better. And I think also a great host, maitre d', restaurant manager can also do the same thing. And I don't understand why there's not more formal qualifications because, how many Australians eat out? Like we're a nation of people that eat out and drink out. We love to do it. So I don't know. I don't understand either. I think there's a massive gap in the market.
And I think that anyone that knows me and listening, especially people that worked with me at Key, would very much say just stay in your lane, Shanteh, because I couldn't solve all the problems of hospitality and I needed to just focus on wine and my team. But I just think it's a shame because, like you said, maybe it's because it's so hard to put, a kind of A to Z list of the skills that you need. Like how do you quantify what makes a great bartender when they're doing a million jobs at once and they're having 6 different conversations with people in front of them and they've got all the kind of charisma? Like maybe it's just too difficult perhaps, but I would like to see that evolve in Australia because I think that is the future of us continuing to have great restaurants and being able to pay staff for their skills and reward them in ways that they totally deserve to be.
I agree, and I mean it needs to be a formal education establishment, and I don't know who would take it on, but I just maybe it should be restaurant and catering or whatever. I don't know. And also sometimes that skill. You're born with it. It's an innate skill. You understand how to look after people. And some people have it. And, I mean, I'm sure you've worked with terrible restaurant managers in your time, and terrible, bar people that can't make a decent martini or margarita. So I think SOMs, you're driven by passion. You're not doing that job because it's a fill-in while you're at uni. You've chosen that career and you're naturally curious to learn more and more because, you peel off one layer and there's 500 underneath. So I think, I don't know, maybe because chefs and somms have that more superstar status that the restaurant management side gets left behind, but it's the hardest job of all, being a manager. I really think so.
Yeah, I agree. And all the personalities that come with it and all the ways that you have to be able to manage them is a true skill. Luckily, I've worked with only pretty much amazing managers, so I feel very lucky. But let's move on to, before we solve the hospitality crisis, let's move on to the Institute of the Masters of Wine. Can you give me a little bit, for people that don't know much about it, someone like myself who hasn't particularly looked into it a lot, I'm just in awe. Can you tell me a little bit about what is the Institute of the Masters of Wine, why does it exist, and how does one go about becoming part of the program?
So I think it was established in the 50s, 60s sometime. So it's a London-based association. So it's not attached to any universities, but it's the highest level of wine knowledge and education in the world, pretty much. I don't really know how else to say that. So it's usually on retail and restaurant and wine trade people do an exam. So there's an entry exam to get in, and it's a course of however long you need to take, although there is some limits on it now. But it's basically you sit a series of blind tastings. So by the time, so there's there's stage one, where you're kind of eased into the program. Then stage two is where kind of you're ready to go, but you need to probably get your knowledge a little bit deeper and practice some tasting. So the exams consists of 36 blind wines and 13 essays over 4 days. So that's the first part of the exam you need to pass before you can proceed to the final part, which is writing a 10,000-word research paper. So there's about 407 in the world today, and there's 27 in Australia. So, each country, the biggest contingent would be in the UK. And I suppose in England, because they have that's the largest amount of MWs globally, they have a very strong presence, where in Australia we're trying to work on people understanding who we are and what we do. We can provide education, consulting. We work in a whole different range of jobs, from winemakers to educators to consultants to, so a whole range. Hospitality, obviously, that's me. It's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do, but also the most rewarding. So, and the way that your entry route into MW is through WSET. So winemakers will get in because they go to university to do their viticulture and vinification degree or oenology. And then, but if you're like on the floor, or, you work in a restaurant or in a bottle shop, you would do WSET level 4. And that's pretty much gets you to sit the entrance exam.
Oh, shit a brick. It's it's a lot. I find it quite hard to comprehend, actually, the sheer amount of work and challenge and fortitude you must have to get through it. How long did it take you to start and finish the process?
So from start to finish, it took me 10 years. So it took quite a while.
It just says so much about you. Really, it does, because I can't imagine how it must affect everything that you're doing. You're also working full time in a huge role. Did it affect, family life? They must go on the journey with you as well, to watch you just, go through this over 10 years?
So I also had, so I've just quickly looked up, it was established in 1953, so just to make sure I'm getting it right. Look, it took 10 years, but I had 2 young children, so, and I was working part-time and then full-time, so you kind of have to think about, how you've got to balance out your home life and your work life and then your study life. And, I couldn't have done it without the family. Like, that was the biggest support. And I also think when I decided to do it, I thought, it'll kind of be like diploma. I didn't really understand the sacrifice and the time it would take, to be honest. And I think also not having gone to university, also I didn't have the formal training to write in the Oxford way of writing for the essays. So there was a lot of self-taught education in there. And I think a lot of Australians, we're not taught how to write essays correctly at school, to be honest. So this becomes a problem. You learn at university, but obviously I didn't have that opportunity. So I did have to dig pretty deep. But, I think, and I say this, lots of people ask me, I'm really thinking of doing the MW, and which is great. Like, we love to have as many people as possible join the institute. So that is really great. And I just say to people, it will take up a lot of time. Don't underestimate the amount of things you might have to miss out on. But I always made sure I went to all the children's sport. I did as much pick up and drop offs. Always made their lunches. There were things as a mother I wanted to make sure I did do, because you only get one chance at your children as well. But I also think that watching me study helped them understand how to, what work ethic meant, what tenacity, not giving up. It's probably the first time you see failure is in the MW program, and that's not a negative. That's, you're going to fail, but it's going to make you better. And I think, they saw me pick myself up, and I didn't throw my toys out of the cot and say I'm not doing this anymore. It's like, well, I failed. Where did I go wrong? How do I fix this? So I think all of that. But talking about the kids helping, I used to, for the practical side of the exam, you'd have to basically try one every day. So I would have these little bottles in the fridge, and they were numbered and on a spreadsheet, and I would get my son to pour them for me before he went to school, which I don't even know if I should be saying this on the podcast, but anyway. He wasn't drinking, and he got to school, and they had show and tell, and they said, "Oh, what did you do this? How was your morning this morning?" He said, "Oh, yeah, I poured wine for Mummy," and it was like, oh my gosh. It's not what you think. It's really not what you think. I'm spitting, I promise. But they, I think I think they're proud of what I've achieved, and I think it's also due to them as well. You can't do this alone, and you can't do it without people. You got a tasting group, you got an essay group, you got mentors all through the way. So you're constantly supported to get through. But at the end of the day, it is a singular pursuit. So got to get a little bit obsessed about it, I think.
Oh, I could talk to you all day about this, because I think that, it's just, it seems out of reach, I think, for so many people. And for me, my understanding of the people I've met that are MWs, I've always thought they're highly intellectual. They are people that can write a thesis a day. They're just so, they're so affluent. They're just so beyond what I imagine of myself. And I think it's so interesting to hear, like you said, even talking about writing an essay. I mean, I agree with you. I don't think that we are taught properly. I remember getting to university and going, what do you mean I have to do references? What the hell is that? And I was like freaking out. I was like, I don't know what that means. And I don't think my essays were very good. I might have done advanced English, but I still don't think I can write an essay well. But so it's so interesting that you say that. And hats off to you, because I just think 10 years and everything you've done, being a mum, running restaurants, and just amazing, Annette. And talk me through the moment when you passed, because there's this incredible photo of you holding up your MW, and there's so much emotion on your face that when I saw it, I actually felt quite emotional myself. So talk me through the moment where you realised you'd passed.
Well, there was quite a few failures in between. So you would get notified via email because, they mark the exams in the UK. Well, they mark them all over the world, but the institute controls the results. And I'd actually been teaching WSET, and I knew the results had come in, and I was teaching. I went, I'll open it later. I don't want to cry in front of the class. It was my last go, and I thought, I can't sit it again. And I got home, and I was sitting in the car, and I thought, let's rip the Band-Aid off. I'm sure I failed. Whatever, I'll deal with it. And I opened the email, and in their very beautiful English, we are so delighted to let you know that you've passed. And I go, oh my God, am I reading this right? And I ran upstairs and I said to my son, does he say I've passed? And I just went mental then. And I just, but that the hard part is passing the exams. You still have to write a research paper. But I suppose the photo that you saw is when you actually realise it's real. So that the ceremony is you walk, it's like kind of walking down the aisle. I mean, I know you've walked down the aisle, and, that nervous excitement, petrified, happy, that whole thing. But when you get it, and it's just pure elation. It's just one of those things. Then you're happy for yourself, you're happy for your family. You did get through, but there's so many wonderful people, really great people in the wine industry that have also I've studied with, and they haven't got through. So it's just, it's mind-boggling as well. So, you're doing it for kind of everyone as well. I think that, you can get through this little Australian on the other side of the world. And, we want wine to be demystified. That's what really needs to happen for, the Institute to be successful is, we need more people drinking wine, not to make it so we don't want it to be intellectual. Wine is a drink to be enjoyed. That should be full stop.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And I think that, like you said, we want the industry to thrive. We want it to blossom and continue to get better and better. And for that to happen, we have to take off that elitism and continue to realise, take our head out of our arse sometimes, I think, a little bit when it comes to wine. But, I mean, I can't imagine that moment for you. It's just truly amazing. And I agree with you, because there are a lot of people that I know have tried for it that are incredibly intelligent people and have such wealth of knowledge. And I think I don't kind of ever judge someone if they've got initials after their name of done this or that. Most of the people that I looked up to in this industry have been in it for a long time and know so much, and it's hard to quantify them. It's kind of by saying, they won this award or they did this, or it's like, they're just a boss. They absolutely legends of the Australian wine industry. So, but amazing. I just think that that's so special. And thanks for telling me a little bit about it, because we, like you said, we want to encourage people to get involved, to look into it, maybe push the boat out and wonder if it's possible that perhaps they could go about it as well. Do you know the numbers of female MWs in the world?
It's about 40%. So it's really, really a solid amount. It's really wonderful to see. It's between 35 and 40% female. So, and I think when it first started, it was all male. So I think it's, they're a very diverse, inclusive association. So they, we've got also scholarships for people that might be marginalised for, where they live or they can't afford to join the program. So they're very much about diversity and inclusion. And I know at that ceremony they had, they were celebrating that, we're nearly it's getting closer and closer to 50% male, 50% female. So it's not like the old days. Like, I'm sure when you were the same, you'd go to a wine dinner or a wine tasting and you'd be the token female. I think that's changed a lot, and it's been, for the better. We do have better palates, females. You know that, don't you?
I definitely know that. And that's what kind of doesn't surprise me now, that when you kind of look at those numbers, you're like, there's an absolutely wonderful representation. They are also a lot more transparent, I find, than some exams in terms of that you can read all the past exam papers, which is what an amazing tool for anyone just kind of, wanting to go back and or look forward and go, what am I in for? I think that that's wonderful that they keep all that information up there. In terms of costing, it is an expensive endeavor as well. Would you say that there's a lot of your own money that you need to put in?
Oh, well, like I was self-funded. So I had some of my jobs would help me go to the seminars. So, that it is expensive. I think that is a barrier to entry. And, if you work for a great company, hopefully they'll pay some of the fees. But that's why you need to get into groups so you can, you can share bottles of wine. And that's why I put wine in littler bottles, because, you can't afford to buy Grand Cru Burgundy or all of these things all the time. So you really need to find a way to be tasting those wines without outlaying bucket loads of cash, because it is expensive. But I would say that, MS would probably be the same. So I think, maybe save a little bit of money and get into groups, and that's a way to make some cost savings. But, yeah, it is expensive, unfortunately.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you need to have that bank of knowledge of what the great wines of the world look like. And I suppose, having roles and jobs in hospitality where you perhaps buy things at cost, and then, like you said, you can use your village that you need to kind of share that, 750 ml bottle into, 60, 90 mils, and then a lot of people can learn from it. I was going to ask what was I going to ask you? I was going to ask in terms of what doors does an MW open up? Like, what does that mean for your future, or for somebody that then says, why go through all this?
Well, for me, I think that you need to be doing it for yourself. Like, I think if you're doing it to get a better job, it might not work out that way. Like, in America, it is definitely, having spoken to USA MWs, it is definitely you get a pay rise straight away and all of this stuff. Australia is different. There isn't a lot of MWs, but also there's not a lot of jobs as well that would require someone at that level. And just because you've got your MW doesn't mean you're good at the job that might be associated with it. So I think you need to be good at the job you're at, and then, hopefully you can use your MW for leverage as well, if that makes sense. I'm unsure in the UK, but I suppose, I have got some consulting work and, like talking and presentations and stuff. And I suppose even I forget that I'm an MW sometimes, and, you forget that people really want, they really take notice. So that's been that's kind of fun, and you don't ever go into the depth that you would go into for your studies, because you also have to read the room and remember that most people are wine enthusiasts. They're not wine nerds. Like, I could get really nerdy if I needed to, but, you've also got to keep it simple. You want to keep people engaged in wine. So I don't think it necessarily will, but it could. And we're hoping in the future that those two letters after your name will open doors. But Australia is still, I think, in its infancy of, population and, what we can do here as well.
I love that, and I appreciate your honesty, because I think that I think you're totally right in terms of those jobs in Australia are kind of few and far between at the moment. And like you said, it's not just restaurant jobs, it's all kinds of jobs, whether it be writing or consultancy. Or so it's interesting. And I think, like you said, getting into it, it really needs to be something you desperately want for yourself, and, you know, are willing to really dig deep to get to. I want to ask a question that was brought up with a couple of wonderful women in wine today when I was talking to them very early this morning, and that was about imposter syndrome. And I was wondering, does someone like Annette Lacey, MW, still get imposter syndrome? Because we were talking about it as a bunch of females and saying why, when it really comes down to the kind of stepping up to the line, do us females occasionally get this imposter syndrome? And I often use my other female friends to kind of say, oh, I'm kind of really nervous about this, or I'm not sure. And then, of course, they all turn around and go, what is wrong with you? But do you still get that sometimes?
I think, I suppose when I think having the MW has given me an amazing amount of confidence, where I know my worth. And I think sometimes I would probably throw it back and say maybe the other person that you're feeling impostering about, or if even that's a word, maybe they don't know your worth. Like I don't, and I think this is the problem, you know, when you're a mother, you go, am I good enough? You know, we're always questioning ourselves, and I actually refuse to do that now. I know I'm good. I know I do what I do. I do what I love, and hopefully I inspire people, but I think when I was younger, I might have felt a bit of imposter, but I just don't let it happen now. Like I refuse to let someone bring me down. And I know they don't do it intentionally, and it's all in your mind, but we've got to believe that we are, you know, we're great people. You know, we've got wealth of knowledge, we've got kindness and compassion. If we should never feel that we can't do something or we're not good enough. We can do anything we want to do. We just have to have the courage to do it. And, you know, and I don't want to get on a sermon, but men never have imposter syndrome because they've got this, well, they might a little bit, but they have this amazing confidence. We should have the same thing, and we should just believe in ourselves, because we're equal to men. Maybe not physically, but definitely mentally and emotionally. So I think we have to brush that aside and not even discuss it, because you just have to say, I am great. I am really good at what I do, and I'm going to prove it.
I also sometimes think maybe that men do get imposter syndrome, but because their makeup is so different to us, they don't voice it. Whereas women, we are designed to talk and discuss, and so perhaps that their little imposter syndrome is just not shared with anybody, but they still feel it. And I thought, you know, that kind of makes more sense to me, because I think, you know, what was that analogy where a woman looks in the mirror and goes, oh, you know, I'm getting a double chin and my boobs are sagging and I've got those wrinkles. And a man kind of sticks his beer belly out and slaps it on the stomach and goes, I look pretty good. But I don't know. I mean, I think you're so right. We have so much to offer in the world, and I have to talk myself off a ledge at times and say, you've got to where you have for a reason, and you know, any challenge you've faced, you can do it. So sometimes I think it is just having that moment with yourself, and
you just need to give yourself a little slap and go, come on. But we all get nervous. Like that's natural. That means you care. Yeah, if you're a little bit jittery, you're like, that's good. You want to have that adrenaline edge, because that's going to push you through. And when it's over, people go, oh, you're amazing. You're like, oh, was I? Oh, thanks. You know, it's all good.
Talking about your role today, I was having a look because I know Solotel is such an amazing beast, but 28 venues from bars to pubs to restaurants. How do you manage to stay connected to so many venues, and how do you approach, you know, beverage when it's so many different styles of venues?
Well, we be very organised. That's probably the first thing. I try to be very organised. And the next thing is also, give a lot of power to the venues to excel, because I need as many people in our business to be interested in wine, because that's going to make my job easier. We put a lot of our teams that are interested through WSET, so we try to educate them as well, and they come back and they're really energetic and focused, and they really want to own their wine list, and I just basically oversee it or make suggestions, because they're in venue and I want them to be selling it. I've got a very small team that I've only got a group bars person who I work with, and the two of us are kind of running around a little bit crazy, but it's all about making sure we get into venue and talking to people and listening to them and trying to give them the tools to be successful in their business. So and also keeping it really ever changing, so that our customers will be wanting to come to our venues because the beverage offer is so great. So just trying to, maneuver that. It is busy, but it's also about empowering the teams and giving them education, keeping organised, touching base, and doing all that. When I first started, we had a very small sommelier team, but now we've got 10 somms in the business on the restaurant side. So that's been really great. And just, we have got for the pub side, we've got a creative beverage program. Every month there's some creative beverage day where things are, discussed, explored, experimented, and we do a deep dive of education for the sommelier team as well. We go on trips, as much collegiate, kind of as much as possible, spending time to nurture them so that they, stay engaged and stay with Solotel as well. That's, retention is really important. So they're the most important people in our business, our beverage. Everyone in our business is important, but seeing beverage is my focus. We invest a lot of time and effort into keeping them engaged and challenged.
I love that you talked about giving them ownership, because when you have a list that you've, even if as a young som you've kind of made a suggestion and someone's looked into wine, when you feel that you've made a part of that list and that you're a part of the decisions, even in a small way, all the way up to being a head som who can kind of say, yep, I've helped create this. There's just so much power in that, and it's wonderful that you are giving that back to the people that you're talking about and the people you look after.
And as a sommelier, if I was telling them what to list, I wouldn't have any sommeliers. I wouldn't work for someone that did my list. That's not the point. That you need that creativity, you need that ownership from a head sommelier perspective. And I know having been one, I know that I want to control the list.
Yeah, I mean, that's where such joy comes in. It's also where you make mistakes, but when you get up to accept an award and you know that you've played a small part in it, it's so joyous. I want to ask you one more question, and that's if you were hiring a wine professional now, even if it's a head som or a junior som, bartender, whatever it may be under your umbrella, what are the main skills that you're looking for? What are the kind of when you first clock them and you sit down, what are you kind of ticking off your list?
So definitely having done some either MS or WSET, even if they've just started at the introductory level 2 level, because it's showing to me they've got the drive to want to educate themselves. And then enthusiasm. We had a great waiter, and she had expressed an interest in wine, but she had no knowledge, but she was fantastic on the floor. Now, we took her under our wing and as a junior som, She's just finished level 3 and she's one of the junior somms at ARIA. So we don't require necessarily experience on the floor. It's about understanding hospitality. It's about, do you know how the restaurant works? Do you know how to serve people? Do you know how to communicate with people? Are you willing to do some wine courses? Because you can teach people how to serve wine, but you can't teach people how to be hospitable. So as long as they've got the passion, and she's going to go do diploma, you know, who knows where she's going to end up. Actually, I think she's going to go to MS, but I'm happy. I'm happy with whatever pathway she goes. But for a head som, they must have done WSET or MS. They don't have to be a master, but, you know, that you want them 1 or 2 levels down or studying, because they need to be curious and they're leading their team. So I expect them to mentor and educate the people under them as well.
Yeah, so I love that. And they also, I think, you know, when you go through a program like that, I think there's a lot to learn in the fact that whatever path you go down, you have to play the game that you've decided to go down. And there's something, I think, in that of like needing people to be flexible and malleable and saying, you know, maybe that's not how it works in the restaurant, but you have to learn it because this is the exam that you're about to pass or whatever. And I think that there's something when people are going, I'm going to go for this and put it on the line, that, you know, they're making themselves vulnerable, aren't they?
Yes. That's a good place to be, though, sometimes, because that's when you're challenged and you probably perform at your best. You surprise yourself as well. Like, life's here to live. You got to live it. Take a chance, you know. If you fail, you just pick yourself up and you have another go.
Yeah, I think that, failing, it's just such a part of life, isn't it? Like, you see it all the time. And we almost need to rebrand the word, because it's not about that. It's trying and then having to try again. But yeah, it's just to be afraid of not being able to do something the first time is crazy, you know. I do want to ask you, if you could only drink 3 beverages for the rest of your life, what would they be and why? I feel like I might know some, but I'm always happy to be surprised. So tell me about what you want to drink today.
Well, wine would definitely be there, no matter what. And if I had to pick one variety, it would be Chardonnay, because it's delicious, and it can be a champagne, it can be a beautiful Chablis, or it can be a classic Australian Chardonnay with, you know, restraint and purity. So definitely wine, but Chardonnay would be definitely my pick of wine. But I tried to I'm just thinking, like, trying to think of categories, and then gin, because everyone likes gin. You can have it in a tonic, you can have it in a cocktail. So that's another one. And I don't really drink much beer, and I only drink one beer, and everyone is mortified that I drink Corona. It's the only beer I drink. So if I had to have 3 on my desert island, I'd like some Coronas cold, because I'd have one, and then maybe I'd have a gin and tonic, and then I would just drink Chardonnay. Corona,
that is the first I've heard of a Corona, but, you know, ice cold, they're definitely smashable. And see, you did surprise me. I love it.
It's a wine drinker's beer, because it doesn't taste like beer.
That's great. Annette, I adore every chat I have with you. You're one of the most easy people to speak to, and just, you know, your brain and your heart are just inspiring. So thank you so much for spending some time. Thank you for all the times that we tried to do this and the internet was failing us. I really appreciate you, and it's been an amazing chat today. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanteh. It was wonderful to talk to you. You're very easy to talk to as well, you know. You get a lot of things out of people, which is probably why you do this.
I love it. Cheers to you, Annette.
Have a great day.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod, and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.